Regular briefing session of the Forsyth County Board of Commissioners. We have a lot to say and a lot to do before we even have the 2 o'clock meeting this afternoon where we vote. And before we begin, I'll turn the meeting over to our Vice Chairman, Don Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is actually our briefings were getting so long, we decided that we needed to expand them into some morning meetings. And so we're actually doing, I think, 4 of these a year, roughly that, and almost on a bi-monthly schedule. So this is kind of our very first one of these briefings. And we actually have 7 presentations for today. Then we're going to take a break for lunch and come back and do the briefing for the regular June 2nd meeting. So I'll just call our folks up, our 7 presentations. We're going to start with Partners Behavioral Health Report. We'll have Jackie Copeland with us, and these are we've normally had these in our regular meeting briefings, but this gives a little different. We got a little more time, so that's good. But Jackie, glad to have you here. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Again, good morning. Again, Jackie Copeland with Partners Health Management, Commissioner Pyler and Vice Chair Dr. Martin and Commissioners. I thank you for the opportunity to come and give you an update on the progress that Partners is making supporting Forsyth County. Want to kind of touch up some key areas. I know you have a packed morning and afternoon, so want to touch on a few highlights regarding key areas such as members served. As you know, Partners serves 2 main groups of members. That's our Medicaid members who receive Medicaid services and our state-funded recipients who qualify for a specific state category. We manage those services. So right now, as of November 1st, since we became your LME MCO, we've served over 4,165 Forsyth County Medicaid members, and that's in that time period of November 1st through April 30th, 2022. We also track our penetration rate. That's the amount of people who are part of that Medicaid recipients, how many of them who need services, how we do it, providing those services for them. We're at 20%. And just to give you a little comparison, the state average of LME MCOs is around 14.5%. So we're tracking at those particular items, those areas. So we feel good about that and looking for improve. And I want to take a moment to thank Commissioner McDaniel. You had some good questions last time, and I think I've incorporated a response into this, but please feel free to ask additional ones. Again, state-funded recipients, we've served a little over 1,500 recipients in that same time period. Now I want to talk to you about our Access to Care line. That's kind of the front door where if a member or recipient or resident of Forsyth County has any questions, they can call that access number. We're rebranding that to be called Partners Access. We're going to expand those duties as when we operate a tailored plan in December 1st of this year. So we're starting to work on some just rebranding changes to get ready to only handle not only behavioral health calls, but also physical health calls, because we'll be taking on that. We're excited about that challenge to serve the whole person starting in December. So far, between the time frame of January 1st of this year to April 30th, we've fielded over 969 calls that came into that call center. Again, that call center is staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year with mental health, substance use, and IDD professionals that can respond to any of the call needs that come in. A little breakdown of what that looks like for Forsyth County. We've had 292 folks call with mental health needs, 235 with substance abuse needs, 52 with intellectual developmental disability needs calling in, and then we also have 587 information and referral only. These are calls we get that just that may not have a specific behavioral health need. They may be calling because they need information about a community resource. We maintain a resource list of all the resources available to folks, and so then we can share the information with them. Sometimes we have folks call in who just want to because they have their behavioral health need, they may need to hear a voice they can kind of talk to, get reassured, and maybe even connect them with maybe they need some type of community advocacy group, support group, 12-step group, that type option for them. And then 124 with emergent needs. These are folks who call in who are in crisis, and we then work with them. We field those calls and get them to a provider to try to get those services met. Next, I want to give you a little breakdown of our care management services. These care management works with those members and recipients who have significantly high needs, and they need that another level of interaction to make sure they're connected and followed, make sure that they don't, hopefully avoid them having any type of higher level of care being required that takes them either out of their home or out of the community. And they also work with those folks who may be in an inpatient facility or a group home and try to help them get back into the community and manage their care. Right now, in Forsyth County, we have 424 members who are receiving mental health substance use care management, and 495 that are receiving intellectual and developmental disability care management. And then we have some members who are dually diagnosed. They have a IDD and they have a mental health substance use disorder, so we then work with them. We have about 73. That's a very specialized team, as you can imagine. Some very specialized needs they have balancing those two. Next, I want to talk about our innovations. These are the folks who either on the innovations waiver, members on the innovations waiver, or want to become an innovations waiver. Presently, Forsyth County has 477 folks who are currently on the innovations services, receiving waiver services. Then we also have 698 who are on the registry of unmet needs. These are folks who have came in, submitted the required paperwork, got evaluations, what have you. They're just waiting for an innovation slot to come available. As you know, that's a pretty big number, and it's a statewide issue. One relief we've seen is the General Assembly did approve an additional 1,000 slots for the state of North Carolina across the counties of North Carolina. So Forsyth County has received 14 new innovation slots as of now, and in July we have additional slots. We're not clear on the number yet. We're working with the state on trying to get that number. Again, 14 and the plus 4th of July. It's not a lot, but it's a move forward, and we're continuing to advocate along with other community advocates to try to get more slots in place.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yes, sir.
On that number, the 477 of folks in Forsyth County on receiving innovation services, those kind of slots that we're getting the 14 new things. How does that overlap with IDD, folks? I mean, in terms of categories, are a lot of those folks IDD folks?
Typically, it could be some, but most of them, once they get an innovation slot, because of it's a slot they have as long as they want it, put it like that, they tend to look to innovation slots. I don't have a breakdown of how many, but I can get that next time to find out how many of them may be an innovation slot, but also receive some IDD services in place too.
Okay, thanks.
And just, great question. I'm glad you brought that up, because that 698 number, I just wanted to also point out, those people who are waiting for a slot, they can receive, if they have receive Medicaid services, or if they have state access to state-funded or fit the criteria for state-funded services, they can receive services there. I think the number is about 22% have said yes, they want to have services, and they're receiving services, even though they're on the registry of unmet needs wait list, as I like to call it. Some families choose to wait until they get the innovation slot and don't avail themselves to the other services, and some may not have Medicaid or qualify for state funding at this time.
I have a follow-up question to that.
Yes, Commissioner
If you don't
Elamine.
mind. When you say 14 new innovation slots, does that come with additional state funding, or what does that mean, really?
Great question. It comes with additional state funds. It provides funds then to open up to the array of services that folks who are on the innovations waiver receive. So yes, so that extra money comes with those families, and they receive those funds, as I said, for as long as they choose to receive them all their life.
And you could remind us, an innovation waiver slot, is it in the 100,000 plus? I can't remember the.
Yeah, the newest number, home is a little over 100,000, 135. I'll confirm that.
135?
Yes, significant amount they have that they can then choose how they want to use for their services, and gives the buying power to the actual family to make decisions for them.
Yeah, I mean, they're substantial, 135,000 a year, yeah.
That's one of the reasons why, any additional state funds to be able to fund more slots.
Jackie, I think it might help to describe somebody who's on that registry. What kind of situation are they dealing with? I know everyone's a little bit different.
Yeah, a little bit different. Yeah, on the innovation slot, it opens them up to a family that may have need some modification for their home, for example, vehicle. As you can imagine, some of these folks who may need expansion in their homes. The state allows them to do some homes to make them more amenable so they can stay in their home. The whole focus is to keep them in their home.
But their diagnosis would be bipolar.
Well, it's more of an intellectual disability based on their intellectual ability, and then also it also entails some of their physical needs too. So it's a variety of ways of diagnosis that come about. We're talking about people who do have a developmental disability, either cognitively, that they need additional services for those. Dementia, I'm not the expert on that particular one, but I don't think it does, but we do receive some services for that. We know we're seeing more and more now, and it doesn't relate to innovation, so I don't mean to mix apples and oranges here, but we also have our traumatic brain injury and some other diagnoses that folks have, but dementia I don't think is one of those, unless we do have some members on innovation waiver who are make it to a point where they do develop dementia because of that aging process and the other.
But fundamentally, you're talking about folks who are dealing with issues where living independently, they need a lot of personal care.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Really, the daily activities of life they're not able to do.
Yes, that's correct. That's a way to look at it. That entails why it kind of goes outside of typically what Medicaid tends to pay for. It gets those other average daily living skills need to be in place, home modification.
Right.
One more 30-second question, Mr. Vice Chair. Thank you very much. Would any of these 14 new innovation slots be applied to the Horizon situation with the population of their facility?
I have to investigate that. I would think that there may be, but I'm going to check with we have our clinical director who's over innovations, and I'll check with her and I can get back a response to you, okay. Commissioner Elamine. Very good question. Next, I want to talk about our provider network. These are the providers that actually provide the services to members in the community. When we first started providing services here in the county, we really had a focus on continuity of care and also of making sure that residents had those providers in place that were providing their services before November 1st, that they were still in place. So we stabilized that and got those on base. Now what we've been doing is focusing on expanding provider network, bringing recruiting and also receiving applications and contracts for new providers to come in to kind of expand the capacity for the county. With that, we've added some new providers. As you see, 103 mental health providers have been added, 39 intellectual and developmental disability, and then 11 substance abuse providers. Again, one of the goals we're excited to hear is providers say that they want to provide more services in our county, and so we're excited that we've been able to add that. And we'll continue to recruit for but gaps and needs the community has. You'll see us later on, I'll talk about some of our community engagement that we've done. We're working with various organizations, stakeholders, advocates, parents, and families to say, what do you see are the gaps and how we can go find providers to meet that gap. And here, I mentioned engaging with the community. I won't go to all of this, but one of the things, then going back to Commissioner McDaniel's question, how we're taking things to the community. Prior to now, as we all have been dealing with the COVID crisis, we've had to do remotely for a lot of our trainings. And to be honest, we're still having some of those still going on. People are comfortable with that, so we still provide those. But we've also kind of engaging more with trainings and meetings with various community stakeholders. You'll see here a list of that. Also wanted to focus to make sure that we are expanding to all the communities that make up Forsyth County. And so you'll see here, we're partnered with other county agencies, such as everything from the drug take back day that we had in partnership with the Sheriff's Office at Mount Zion Missionary Baptist Church. We've also went out to Clemens, participated in the Clemens Community Day, providing information to anyone who may come to try to introduce partners to them, what are some options for them, and hopefully start to address how you get those, how you go find those people and make sure they know where they can turn to when they need services. Bless you. And then also, we've been working with some of the advocacy groups you see here, meeting with them, hearing needs. I know the last time I was scheduled to meet, but we had to reschedule Special Olympics, and I was kind of glad because that morning I was helping out, volunteering Special Olympics, working with those families, giving them information. And you'll see also with the schools and what have you, really trying to, as I know I mentioned before about our partners community model, and our community model is doing these things, working with community stakeholders, interacting with them, making sure that we are active and seen and part of the community.
Sir, excuse me
Yes.
just a minute.
Commissioner Wisnot?
In the future, do you think you could do more engaging with all our schools? I think our schools definitely need to be engaged right now. Do you see that in your future?
Most definitely. Yes, ma'am. Great question. Yes.
Okay,
We're involved now with them, with the School Health Advocacy Council, working with them. And then we're also working with various schools to try to engage them in more ways we can. Some of that's through our provider network, but then also partners kind of role to make sure we're here, what their gaps and needs are. We're meeting with those. We have a quarterly superintendents calls throughout our area, but we invite the superintendents and they can come and talk about their areas, they have concerns and so we're trying to figure out multiple ways to be able to partner with the schools and hear from them. As you can see, we participate in Lawrence Middle School Transition Fair, and we're looking for those opportunities that our community engagement or member engagement teams can be out there and work with them.
I did see Lawrence, and that's great. But we have a lot of county schools too.
Yes. So we're looking at that also. That's why the Clemens Day, we're excited to jump on board there because it's the Clemens. We want to make sure we do Kernersville also and Rural Hall and other areas. And more than just Winston-Salem, the city of Winston-Salem, but the entire county. We're really aimed at that.
Thank you.
And I think next to my last slide here is with the other unfortunate epidemic that we're in, the opioid epidemic. Partners has continued to work with various community partners trying to address and decrease the number of opioid suicides that occur. One of that ways that we participated and went out is we went out and applied for some two sources of additional funding. And that is, we received a state opioid use disorder grant to be able to have more services related to that, and also to buy what you'll hear me talk about, the Narcan or naloxone spray kits to help reverse any type of overdose. And with that, we've also been fortunate enough to receive a SAMHSA grant, federal grant, to bring in dollars to help those services. So on March 23rd, we delivered a little over 1,000 Narcan spray dosages to 4 key agencies here, organizations, to the county EMS department. As they go out and do their calls, they can then, we hope it allow them to kind of build up their supply. And then also the sheriff's office, as they also on calls, they unfortunately have to administer that, so we help them provide that. And 2 providers, Insight Human Services, they run a Medicaid assistance treatment program and other programs too in their offices. And so we gave some doses to them. And then also Atrium Health, Wake Forest Baptist mobile engagement team. They're out there engaging folks. And in both of these cases, we have a lot of times about the latter one where family members have a loved one who may be abusing opiates, and they're just concerned and want to be there in case someone is going to have an overdose. They can hopefully administer a reversal. One thing we've asked all these groups as required by federal and state dollars is to we want to track to those positive reversals so that we can be able to report that back and just know in our community how we're attacking this epidemic.
Did you not give the Winston-Salem PD Police Department any in that?
We didn't hear back from them. It was one day, but we're going to do this again. When we initially had this, we had limited supply and reached out and heard back from certain groups that reached out to us, and these 4 did. We're going to reach out to them and do more. When we initially got the first shipment, we had a short time frame. We actually started this process having to look at the total dispersal amount in mid-January, and so at the time we didn't hear back yet, but at the time we now have relations with the Winston-Salem PD, so we'll be definitely including them if they desire to have any. And that includes my presentation. Thank you for your time. Are there any questions, additional questions you have for me?
Just one final question, Mr.
Yes,
Vice Chair.
Bellamy.
I noticed that you went to the Samaritan Minister staff meeting. Would you include Bethesda Homeless Center also in your next series of meetings? I'm sure the staff would appreciate that.
Yes, we actually, yesterday I was at the Green Tree Peer Center and met with some of the folks at Samaritan, and we have some plans to go meet with them, some of their outreach folks, especially the folks who I think who go out in the streets, the street outreach team. We're reaching out to them and also talk to the city with dwellings and also work with them too. So yes, we would definitely add them to our list.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
All right,
Jackie.
thank you all.
Well, Vice Chairman, if I may.
Yes, ma'am. Commissioner
I don't
McMahon.
have any questions. Well, I have one question, but I do want to say thank you for the very intensive report. That's much better. I have gone through to some of the community events, so I appreciate you definitely getting on the ground and doing that. But what's most important to me now moving forward is to know whether or not the survey of services are being asked to some of the recipients to just kind of know if this is working, is this something that they like? Do we need to make changes? It's important to hear back from the community. So is that something that you're doing?
I can work on that. I can work then with our providers. Kind of some of them do those type surveys.
Yeah.
So I'll get with the provider network team and see what we can do to get that information to add to a future
Okay.
quarterly update.
Thank you. But I appreciate everything that you've done. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Keep
you.
doing your work.
And I'll also get some responses that y'all have, get some answers back to the commissioners too through Ms. Robinson. All right. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Jackie. I was just looking at our group of 6 remaining presentations, and 4 of them are actually staff, and I thought I might just change the order a little bit and I know that we have 2 guests that are here that are not part of staff, and I might ask them first, and the first of those would be our update on the unmanned aircraft system, UAS report from Basil Yap, and I think Mark Davidson's going to assist him. Yes? Are you ready?
Basil Yap is going to present.
He's going to do it? Okay.
Actually has the presentation.
All right, very good.
Good morning.
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 So we're excited to be here. Let's see. Able to get the slideshow presented. Okay. Are you able to share the? I guess the slides are just a little bit off there. I don't know if you'll be able to hit the presentation mode.
Have you seen this report?
Looking forward.
Hazel, do you have a hard copy of it by any chance?
Do not. It looks like we've got it focused here. So.
Yeah. Sometimes it's difficult to get the PowerPoint to play as you, so, I mean, we can scroll through it, seeing with that view, but it's hard to get it to go full screen. We've had that issue in Teams a couple of different times.
I think we'll go ahead and move forward. I do appreciate the opportunity to provide an update on the final report of the work that was contracted by the county to HopeCon. So we'll just go to the next slide here. Just kind of to level set, give you a quick history. If you remember, HopeCon was contracted to provide an advanced air mobility strategic plan, which we did back last year, presented that to you, and we worked with Greater Winston-Salem Inc. to put that plan together. And so that's the document you can see on the screen. And if we go to the next slide, you'll note that there were 3 focuses that strategic plan outlined for us as we look at advanced air mobility. And I'll just remind you again, advanced air mobility is a category that includes both drones, but the electrification of aircraft and automation of aircraft, which is really fundamentally changing how we will view aviation in the future. If we think about the jet engine, that changed aviation and really expanded the footprint and helped usher in an era of really connecting connecting internationally our communities together, because we're able to move folks with jet engines much quicker. And so, that helped expand, but now we have kind of these shorter and smaller areas that we can address now with this new technology like drones. And so we'll hit next here. And so we outlined 3 steps: build America's first urban advanced unmanned aviation system. Next, please. Grow the AAM innovation ecosystem. Next, and create an organization to lead this effort. And so it's really exciting that you guys were very interested and focused on continuing that effort, and that was the focus of the contract and the report that we're sharing with you today. So we'll go to the next slide, please. So there are 5 tasks that we completed that are noted in the final report. Develop a UTM ConOps, engage with UAS industry to kind of identify the key flight requirements to help expand these operations. So just a reminder, Atrium Wake Forest Baptist has been a leader in the medical drone delivery space. In fact, last year had the first COVID-19 vaccine delivery via drone, which is really exciting. First in the country happening right here in our community. And so we worked with both Atrium Wake Forest Baptist as well as UPS, who is flying their drones for them, and asked them, what is it that you need to expand your footprint here in Winston-Salem? So we got some great feedback that's outlined in that report. We talked to a lot of other players in that space as well. It also had the task of research and identifying what the capital infrastructure needs are. We were on call to help with the Greater Winston-Salem Inc. for any economic development opportunities. And then we supported North Carolina and promoted Forsyth County at one of the largest drone conferences in the world under the contract. And then we were really excited about the work in engaging our state legislature to allocate funding, long-term funding. So taking that little bit of seed money that you're able to give us and help it grow by going to our state legislature and really telling a compelling story. So next. So I'm just going to quickly note 2 of these particular tasks for you. So next. So develop a UTM concept of operation. And the reason this is important is because now we have a document that we can share with the industry that says, yes, Forsyth County is focused and interested in bringing these technologies to Winston-Salem and Forsyth County. And so we have shared that document with many folks, and they're very excited now about the work we're doing here. It's a great way to illustrate our plan here for the community. We're focused on 3 key markets in the drone space. Drone delivery, I mentioned our leadership there with Atrium Wake Forest Baptist on the medical package delivery side. Infrastructure inspection, and public safety. And so I'll just note, there's been a couple of really interesting things that have happened that kind of show you the benefit of the use of UAS. So as you are all aware, the Weaver fertilizer plant was really, a serious public safety concern. And as you know, there was an evacuation perimeter that was set up. And so the use of drones to monitor that facility was critical to understanding where the fire was spreading, were they able to contain it, and were folks in danger. And so that's just one example recently of the value, again, of using UAS. Infrastructure inspection is also equally important. North Carolina DOT is using drones on the projects right here in our community and the expansion of roads and new roads being built. Next, please. So the second part that I wanted to note was we were awarded $5 million from the North Carolina General Assembly. I just want to thank each one of you for your work there. I know we spoke to everyone and your support around helping our legislators understand that vision and allocate that funding. So $5 million was set aside to AirX to build an urban advanced air mobility system here in Winston-Salem. We've been in receipt of those funds, and as you may be aware, there are some restrictions, meaning we would need to expend those funds within a certain amount of time. And so we're excited to start that work, and we'll go to the next slide. And we've started that work under what we call Project Atlas. So as you know, aviation is fraught with acronyms. So Atlas stands for Air Traffic Low Altitude Surveillance. And so we began that in March of this year. So while we were awarded the funds in November of last year, we were actually in receipt of the funds in March. So the language said that it needed to be shared in the bank accounts of the recipients within 100 days of the bill being signed. As you remember, the budget bill was signed just before Thanksgiving. So we released an RFI, which is called a request for information, to the industry. And actually, earlier this week, the last 2 days, I was hosting an industry day right here in Winston-Salem. And so we had large manufacturers in this space and service providers such as Raytheon, Thales, L3 Harris come to Winston-Salem, look at the area, and provide us feedback on how they could help us build this system here. And so we're really excited that we're making this meaningful progress. We hope to procure a system in late summer, early fall, get that system set up so it's ready to run beginning of next year. So we are moving quickly to get those funds allocated and start attracting businesses to our community. Next. I noted that there were 3 focuses under the ConOps. And so that third one was public safety. And a few weeks ago, I had the opportunity to to visit Chula Vista Police Department in California, which is a small police department just south of San Diego. And with me were the sheriff, Bobby Kimbrough, as well as the Winston-Salem Police Chief, Joyner. And we were able to go see how this police department was using drone as a first responder. And so drone as a first responder is flying a drone out on 911 calls to have eyes on the scene before the police arrive. And they can actually get there in a much shorter time period. And that is critical information to relay to the responding officers. And there was a clear message that we got in that visit. It was, this drone is a de-escalation tool. It is able to gather information before a police officer arrives to share so that interaction is both safe for the officer as well as the citizens. So we're really excited to take that information back and see how we can apply that here to our community. I believe there's a briefing that the sheriff will be giving on June 16th to share more details about this. Next slide. You can just go to the next 3. Great. So as you know, we have the $5 million that has been dedicated from our state legislature to build this infrastructure. And when we build this infrastructure, Project Atlas, we know we will attract businesses or help the businesses here expand. For example, UPS, we'd love to have them expand their footprint here. We'd love to bring in new drone delivery operators or startup companies that are focused on these type of sensors. And when we attract the businesses and create jobs, we want to fill those jobs with local talent. And so I want to just quickly talk to you about an initiative we're working on that we're excited about. Next slide, please. So I have been fortunate because of this team here, of the county commissioners, to be appointed to the Smith Reynolds Airport Board, which I am very excited about, hoping to bring the knowledge of my years working for NCDOT, Division of Aviation, and the airport side to help continue the great work that you've started there. We'll go to next, please. So as you're probably aware of, Smith Reynolds has the largest economic impact of any North Carolina general aviation airport in the state. So general aviation airport just means non-commercial service. So it's not a PTI or a Charlotte. And that's really exciting. And I think that is both the work of the county commissioners as well as Mark Davison and his leadership there. So we're really excited about that, that footprint. The next. But unfortunately, there's also a 2015 Harvard study found that the third worst economic mobility in the U.S. Is found in this same area. And so we have these two kind of, two things here. We're really proud of this great work and this economic impact of the airport, but then we have local communities that that are not seeing that benefit. So how can we connect those two things together? And we saw this as a tremendous opportunity. Next, please. So we recently, joining our team at AeroX is Don Sweeper. Don's joining us today, right here. Don has been a leader in this space. He's a graduate of North Carolina A&T. He's working on his PhD right now, and he's led a variety of different STEM initiatives, both at the A. Shaw Academy, the Forsyth County Community College, through Winston-Salem State University, North Carolina A&T, and even Duke University. So we're really excited about him joining our team. And so we have initiated an effort called Wasp. Again, we love our acronyms. Workforce Apprenticeship Skills Program. And so as you're aware, there are additional ARPA funds, and we are going through the application process now. So this is a little bit of a preview. But what we want to do is we want to focus on those neighborhoods surrounding the airport. And we want to provide those students in that area the necessary skills and experience for jobs both in aviation as well as the technology sector. So we, through STEM initiatives that, again, are already ongoing, we're able to expose kids to both coding, to flight, right through aviation and flying drones. And so there's really kind of lots of different verging paths for them. One, they could say, Les, I'm really excited about traditional aviation. I'd love to go become a mechanic, an A&P mechanic, airframe mechanic, work through the Forsyth County Community College, and be able to work for one of the large companies at Smith Reynolds Airport. Or they may say, I'm really excited about drones. Now I want to train and maybe go work for a UPS or a Zipline or many of the other companies that are already in this region working on drones. Or they may say, I'm now excited just about coding and technology and pursue another career, again, in the technology sector. And so we're really excited about this work. And again, it's combining the assets that we already have in our community and addressing the needs that we have in our community, connecting those two together. Next slide, please. So we mentioned these three initiatives at the beginning. It was Build America's first urban advanced unmanned system, and we have the funding now to do that, the $5 million. It was created an organization to lead this effort. We have AeroX, a 501c6, AeroX Foundation, which is a 501c3. And so now we're focused on grow the AAM innovation ecosystem, and that's where WASP helps fit the bill there. Next, please. So in conclusion, I'll just mention a couple items before taking questions. So again, we're going to continue our work on Atlas. We ask that you just be advocates, share this with others as you travel around the community, travel around our state, and travel around our nation. We want to be a beacon to companies that are focused and excited about drones and advanced air mobility. The second is we're really excited to share in the future drone as a first responder and the opportunity there. We'd ask that you be very excited and listen to that opportunity in the future. And the second is, consider the Workforce Apprenticeship Skills Program, WASP, and our submission through the ARPA funding when that comes through. So Really excited, again, to share this, share our update with you, and I'm open to any questions that you may have.
Is
Thank
the
you.
WASP program tied in with Forsyth Technical Institute?
So Forsyth, yes, that's one reason we're working with Donald Sweeper, who is doing weekend classes there and has helped helped lead their UAS or drone portion of the facility there, the new facility at the airport.
I find it interesting that you're using the drone program. Is there any possibility that you could over-drone yourself with too many people flying drones in that area for various purposes?
Yeah, so we want to be, very clear that we do not want drones to impact in any way our airport.
Yeah.
As I noted, it is the largest has the largest economic impact of any general aviation airport in the state, and we want to ensure that we keep that leadership role there. So when we talk about drones, it's things like building drones. They actually have a large hangar at the facility. They've flown drones inside of the hangar, but we are very careful. We do not want to be, again, interfering with any of the things, any of the traditional aircraft at the airport.
Yeah, I was interested when you began saying things about Smith Reynolds Airport as it relates to Charlotte and PTI. But when you made the comment, it's Forsyth Tech is a player, Smith Reynolds Airport is a player in aviation areas of its size in the state. That was very interesting.
Yeah, so it's the largest general aviation airport. So of all the airports, we have 72 airports in our state. I think there's about 11 of them that are commercial service, and all the remaining do not have regular commercial service. And so that's where Smith Reynolds is the leader in that space.
It was really an interesting report you gave.
Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chairman, if I may, thank you for the report. It's really good, but I do see some young people here, and I'd like to hear from them today, where they come from in the community, what the expectation is when they are completed the program, and I'd also like to know how many participants are in the program also. I don't want to waste your time, young people. Come on up and talk to us.
Good morning. I'm Quantum Plummer. I'm a 12th grader at Quality Education Academy. I'm also a FAA certified drone pilot. I'm part of the AeroX and SweepWorks drone apprenticeship program. I'm sorry, we want to hear from me again?
That's okay. How many people are in your program?
Currently, we have 3 certified drone pilots right now.
3. Okay. And what community do you come from? Where do you live? What side of town?
East side. I live near downtown.
That's what I needed to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
I was just concerned. I hadn't seen many of the students, and it's good to know that that's working. So thank you.
Yes, and this is the beginning of the program. So again, the work, I want to be very clear that the work that has been done to date is really the work of Donald Sweeper, which is why we felt like partnering with someone who is so embedded with the community and has the skills and to help us lead this. So, we know that relationships and is key to success. So the second is my daughter. So she may be a little bit more nervous to come up. But anyhow, she is starting at the Career Center next year and focused on aviation as well as computer science. So as you can imagine, I've shown a lot of interest in drones, but it's going to be up to her to where she proceeds.
Thank you.
So I just want to know, is she here because you made her be here, or is she here because she wanted to be here?
That's a good question. She's actually, well, do you want to come up
Oh,
and
she's
say
going
why
to
you're
speak
here?
for herself. There you go.
No, it goes for it. I didn't have school today, so I just wanted to come and see what he was doing. That's why I came.
I understand.
And yeah, I'm interested in the aviation industry and what my dad is doing, but mostly we had a presentation at our school about what the Army is doing with drones, and that was really interesting to me. So yeah.
You make your dad proud. I've got 2 daughters, and one of them said, "Don't ever ask me to speak in public." Why? Because I might cry. I said, "You're not going to cry," but you did a great job.
Thank you.
I did get 3 texts that said, "Do not make me speak," so I appreciate the request coming from you all. Thank you. Other questions?
I had one follow-up question. Do you have a relationship with Carver or the Atkins Technology or Atkins Preparatory School at this point? Are you still developing that relationship?
So that'd be a good question, Don. The relationships, again, Don is the leader in the relationship, so.
Okay.
Hi, good morning. It's still developing at this point. Been really connected throughout the community through Winston-Salem State University, Jim Shaw Ace Academy. I'm currently at Quality Education Academy there, so kind of working my way through the entire community. Have a relationship with Mixer and also Caladium. So we have plenty of camps this summer that we're planning that's through general aviation and drone STEM. Yeah. Okay. So,
Yay, good for you.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Basil, I got a question on your industry day that you mentioned earlier, where you said you mentioned several companies that were here. Because I think obviously the hope is, that's we have to train the workforce and we're doing all these other things, but it's designed to provide, some economic energy here in the community and to really make having this Atlas program in place. You have to have business to be using the drones for delivery and doing other kind of things. Did you get any good, other than just sort of awareness, did you get any good sort of indications from any of the folks who came that they might, give some serious consideration to bringing their work to here, here to town? Obviously we have Atrium and UPS is a great provider and so forth, but talk a little bit more about that business development side.
Yeah, great question. So Industry Day was to help vendors that could provide this system come and see the community.
They're really suppliers.
Yep,
they're suppliers to build the Atlas program.
However, we did indicate we expect a footprint, so an office here to help maintain that. And the feedback we got was, we're really excited to work with you because there are only maybe 3 other locations, and this is the only area that is an urban environment. Which we know urban environments have the largest market for things like drone delivery. And it's the only area that has 2 healthcare systems, Novant and Atrium Wake Forest Baptist, that are actually paying customers of this service. And so with that, there's lots of interest on the suppliers to be here. Those suppliers work closely with lots of operators as well.
Okay.
And so in turn, part of their pitch to us was, we have many of these relationships and we want to bring those companies to this area when we get it set up. And we're sharing what you're telling us with them, and they're very excited. So I'll note that our team also went down to Bentonville, Arkansas, and spoke with Walmart, who is a leader in the space. And there's lots of interest, again, in expanding that footprint here. So.
Good, thank you. I misunderstood that first part. I got you, though. That makes sense now. Any other questions for Basil?
Just one final question, please. In your strategic plan, will you be going back to the General Assembly for another ask, or the county commissioners for another ask going forward?
Yes, we certainly want to have the system up and running by the beginning of next year to understand what is the need in the future. Mm-hmm. So you never go back and ask until you've been able to demonstrate with what you have, and that's the way we've always focused our efforts. So I'll mention on the Wasp side, we saw the opportunity with the ARPA funds and the application process being open again. And so that's a pathway for the Wasp program to proceed.
Okay. Any other questions? Thanks for being here.
I'll just make one last comment. I do really appreciate you guys appointing me to the Smith Reynolds Airport board. I know during those conversations and the appointment, it was mentioned about voting versus non-voting members, and so I hope that you will take that into consideration. I know I'm filling that role as a non-voting member, so thank you for your time.
Well, thank you for serving on the airport board, so thank you. All righty, our other guest presentation is this is actually the annual report of the Community Appearance Commission. And I think we have is Anton, and I apologize, is it Mosovi? Mosovi? Pronounce your last name for me.
Musayev.
Musala.
Musaiva.
Musayev.
Messiah.
That's right.
Messiah.
Good
Thank you.
morning, everybody. My name is Anton Musayev, and I'm the chair of the Community Appearance Commission. I'm a Russian Native American that had an honor to become a citizen at Old Salem Naturalization Ceremony in 2017. And I was invited as a keynote speaker the following year. I'm a realtor and I love my city, and this is my home. Just want to give you a little history. This past year witnessed the continued effect of ongoing COVID pandemic, which has left an indelible mark on our community. The Community Appearance Commission has largely been able to adapt its work to life during the pandemic, with all of the commission's meetings this year being held virtually. Unfortunately, the Community Roots Day was canceled for the second consecutive year due to safety concern related to holding this event during the pandemic. It is our hope that we are able to hold the Community Roots Day again in the fall of 2022, and I believe the date was already announced, and I believe it's October 15th. So the Commission was able to continue with one of its core responsibilities of reviewing and providing design input for publicly funded projects. In 2021, the Commission reviewed renovations for a school, recreation center, park, and proposed boat storage building at Salem Lake Marina. The CAC is also looking forward to sponsoring and organizing the next biennial Community Appearance Award program in the spring of 2023. We also appreciate the ongoing support of this Winston-Salem City Council, Forsyth County Board of Commissioners, and the City County Planning Board. We're hoping that 2022 will be a productive year for CAC as it continues to work to improve the visual character and aesthetic quality of Winston-Salem and Forsyth County. We're very excited being completely returned to our in-person commissions meeting and activities. This year, we are also very excited to partner up with Creative Corridors Coalition. They're working hard and diligent to make our city beautiful, green, artful, and iconic. Some of the current and future projects include welcome signage for our city, Peter Oliver Cultural Site, and MLK Streetscape, and a lot more. As always, our members and I welcome suggestions for programs and potential partnerships that we can undertake to better serve the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Anton?
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All righty, we'll go back to, we have, I think, 4 staff presentations, and we'll start with our Deputy County Manager, Damon Sanders Pratt, and he's going to talk about the Multi-Use Agriculture Event Center.
So, thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman, Chairman, and Commissioners. So I wanted to give you an update on where we are with respect to the Multi-Use Agricultural Event Center and its placement and design. And then I would field any questions or suggestions that you might have. So just a review of the timeline of how we got here. So on November 8th of 2016, there was a bond question that passed by 71%. That included a Parks and Recreation bond, and a multi-use agricultural event center was part of the conversation that led to that bond for $5 million. And that passed again by 71% for 29% against. After that time, in January through December of 2018, county staff considered our other county-owned properties as potential event center locations. Then we also looked at similar North Carolina facilities, what kind of features those have, what kind of uses they use in them, and then those financial performances were reviewed by staff. And then we also explored municipal partnerships, and with more or less success as far as having them actually operate the facility. But there was some interest in having it in those communities, but not actually operating it. Then in February of 2019, at one of your winter work sessions, there was a presentation on multi-use agricultural event center concepts, potential sites with an emphasis on Tanglewood. And part of that emphasis was that it had an infrastructure that was already there that accommodates events. So the road infrastructure, staffing, and it's a fairly buildable area. The Tanglewood site was explored as a destination in that February of 21, a couple years later, and an RFQ was issued for a design build team. And then in May of that year, the staff considered those applications to ultimately construct the multi-use agricultural event center potentially at Tanglewood. So before we got there, there was some public sessions that we conducted when it looked like there wasn't as much interest in having it at that location. So we had an input session on July 27th, another one on July 28th, both of those at Tanglewood, and then we had another one here at the Government Center on August 4th. And so then we also had an input survey that we put out for about a month, and then we provided a staff report to the board on the results of those meetings and those survey responses. In October of 21, we were directed to look at a different location. And so on February 3rd, Dudley and myself went to Tobaccoville Town Council, Village Council meeting, and talked to their elected officials and those who were there from the community about potentially locating it at the Rolling Hills property, which is just north of Tobaccoville, but already owned by the county. We had a couple of input sessions there on March 15th and the 30th. This is a picture of some of the folks who attended one of those sessions. And then we also had a online survey that ran for about 2 weeks. So some of the results from the public meetings you can see listed here. Some of the things that people liked about the site at the Rolling Hills were trails, equestrian activity. They thought that that location was better than the current North Carolina Cooperative Extension location over by the airport location. And then there's also the larger airport plan that includes that property as part of that location. It's a fairly low density development, what our park activity would be at Rolling Hills. And so people liked that idea. It would increase village activities. Some people thought that was positive. Demonstration gardens, youth activities were something they wanted to see. It would be a project that would be unique to Tobaccoville and Forsyth County that would draw people, some regional attention from the county there. And then others thought it would be a good location for an emergency animal shelter when that was needed for larger animals. Some of the concerns were additional traffic, the noise emanating from the site, which I thought was a little bit of a stretch, but there was concern about it. It would attract people to that area from throughout the county. So some thought that was good, some thought that was bad to have people come into that area. The property value was a concern, although I had an opportunity to talk with Chris Murphy, just chatting with him about park impacts, like county parks on property values, and generally park impacts are positive. They're not negative. And then late night events, there was concern about that, taxes to finance the project, and then livestock odor. But again, we'd be a ways away from the property line. If you're gonna smell livestock there, you probably would be at the event. So letters and survey flyer went out to about 1,300 residences within 2 miles of the property, which is really this the darker kind of goldenrod looking color there. And here's the site. So with about 2 miles from the site, we sent out letters trying to encourage people to respond to the survey on the location at Rolling Hills. So there were a number of questions, but the most pertinent question for this purpose here is, please select the option that most accurately reflects your opinion on a multi-use agricultural event center being proposed for development in Tobaccoville. And so you can see the responses were 57% were in favor of the 300, and I believe it was 78 responses. That's right. You can see kind of a visual of where the respondents were from. So mostly in the area around the park. And you had some more remote responders, and then some throughout the city. And it would be in a facility that was for the entire community, not just for that area. So kind of as a summary of those responses, 217 or 57% were specifically in favor of that location and having that facility there. But then if you tallied up those who were in favor, unsure or neutral, but not against it, then there were 77% in that regard, and only 23% said they did not want it there. Here's a map of Forsyth County. I know there was a little confusion at one point about where Rolling Hills actually was, and there's actually a development in town called Rolling Hills, but we're actually talking about this location up here by Tobaccoville and King area. This is an outline of the property, and it's bisected by a railroad track that runs through basically the middle of it. The whole thing is 186 acres, and the part that we focused on was really the northern part, because we've been able to actually acquire this piece of property here, which this is Doral Drive, and so this allows access directly into the site from Doral Drive and fairly significant stacking in this area to get into it. Another question on the survey was what events would we consider attending or participating in if it was placed there. So you can see that the largest response was for lawn and garden shows. There was also interest in small farm events. Dog shows was another one that was fairly popular, and beekeeping events. This is a conceptual rendering that was done by City County Planning to have an idea of things that could be placed on the location. Now, you can't see it really well on here, but these are 10-foot topography lines. And so, you know, when you see each line, it drops off 10 feet. So where the developed area is actually located on the northern part is really the least steep areas on the plan. And so now there are suggestions for horseback riding and trails, multi-use trails. I know it's probably a little hard to read, but multi-use arena or outdoor practice ring, parking areas, restrooms, a multi-use building, which would also include the cooperative extension offices, and then outdoor education, gardens, and so forth. So this, again, was done by City County Planning. So we've not actually hired an architect. This is a conceptual idea of what could be on the site. So we looked at the current funding that we have, about $7.8 million, of which $5 million was from the referendum, and then another $2.8 of PAYGO. And that wouldn't get us really far. Right now, we're focusing on that buildable area that's not quite as steep, although it is, there are some contours that would need to be graded. So there'll basically be some road work off of Doral, this road leading into it, paved parking, and then outdoor uncovered ring, and then internal access roads. And then these parking spaces are really just on grass. So basically just paving. And this is the location that there would be the cooperative extension office, and then kind of support outdoor activities there. Now, why the $7.8 million doesn't go as far here as it would at say Tanglewood, for example, as there's already the road access to lots at Tanglewood. You already can come off of 158 and drive on. There's a stacking opportunity there. It's also more buildable, so it's more level than it is going to be at Rolling Hills. A lot of the cost here will be grading. So that's why this is a little more. Your dollars don't go as far, because there's a fair amount of grading and paving that we'll have to do on this site that we wouldn't have had to do at Tanglewood, because it's already kind of built for events. So with the $7.8 million budget estimated, we could, and we got this information from some preliminary work that was done when we were looking at the other side, but road access off of Doral Drive, an outdoor uncovered arena, which isn't really an expensive amenity, grading and paving, which is where most of the cost would be, interior roadway, a restroom building, and water and sewer, which is available across the street on Doral Drive. We'd have to get to the lines there. This is a second rendering, which we estimate this is about $12.8 million. So again, you still have the road access, you still have the parking spaces, and now we've added the cooperative extension building here, 20,000 square foot building, and some support recreational activities, so playground, outdoor exhibit space, and a pavilion here. So basically, that's the $7.8 million budget that you saw first, plus with the additional $5 million, we could add the cooperative extension space and some support exhibit space there for a total of 12.8. The third rendering is $18.8 million. And so it includes all the features from the prior two renditions that I showed you, but then this has a closed arena. So these are the first two that you saw. This last example here has a 40,000 square foot covered arena. So why that's significantly more expensive than the outdoor is you're going to have stable space inside, some of it that can be removed. Stands, HVAC, it'll be sprinkled. You have to have structural steel, concrete slab, and so forth for a covered arena as opposed to an outdoor arena where you basically just have the space designated and fencing around it. So that's an estimate of $18.8 million right now. Some other potential recreational amenities that have been discussed that were part of some preliminary planning, 3 miles of horse trails, which is about 600K, 10-foot wide, 1.5 mile long biking area or multi-use trail, about $500,000. Playground complex runs us about $175,000. And then a shelter complex would be about $650,000. And the pond, which would really be on the lower half, so that's not what we're talking about developing now, but that could be another $1 million to build the pond. You got the creek there, but you have to expand that to be a larger pond that you could use as a recreational activity. So I asked City County Planning to kind of come up with a master plan concept of both sides of the property. So again, here's the railroad track, and this is the first phase that we would try to develop on the northern part because we had road access. The challenge with the lower part is on here, he shows a connection over the railroad, but we don't actually have permission to do that. So this is really a future plan here. But in the southern part, there's potential again for a park pavilion there, a playground and restrooms, nature trails, equestrian trails, disc golf here. And then again, this is where the pond would be at there. And then on the northern part, a maintenance facility. Again, this is the arena with separate stables, not just mixed into the arena, and then some riding rings and the cooperative extension facility. So our next steps, if the board was okay with the staff moving forward with the Rolling Hills location, was to put out a request for qualifications for design build team in between June and September here to have someone come and actually design on that site. And then additional funding opportunities, PAYGO, which should be an October decision, legislative funding. So I think a week ago we had legislators here, some of them remotely, and mentioned this as a potential funding project. And then ARPA funding might be an opportunity as well. And when we visited Chatham County, their facility, they did fund part of that with ARPA money. But we hadn't done that here, but that's a potentiality here. And with that, I'll be glad to entertain any questions.
Mr. Chairman, I'm a bit reluctant to ask this question, but just out of curiosity, for the future plan, could we possibly think about an RV park?
You could think about an RV park.
Think about it? Okay. It seems to be a very popular thing right now, and I think in the future it's going to remain popular, so that's the reason I'm bringing it up.
Damon, is there some restriction on the use of the manor house at Tanglewood in the transfer of that property from the estate? Is there
not that I'm aware of.
Was there ever any study done to see if the manor house could be the offices for the agricultural, for our Forsyth Ag Department?
Well, we talked about it as potential offices at one point when we were looking at trying to cash flow the manor house business that we run as a bed and breakfast. And then if we didn't run it as that, we could convert that potentially to offices. We had mentioned cooperative extension in particular, but that's a possibility.
I mean, it seems to me the bond was for $5 million. You could do all of this at Tanglewood within that budget. Land's there, the road's there, the parking's there, the RV park is there. The only thing that's not there is a covered equestrian event center, or however you want to call it. And I just don't want to give up on that because I think it's the most appropriate place for it. And I'm probably not going to do any favors in Clemens, except with some of the commissioners there. But it seems to me that this is a much bigger project than we had in mind to begin with. And money's going to be hard to find after the next few years because you're still going to have annual operating costs out there. The Tanglewood actually would be the best spot. I think it still is. And if there's no restrictions on the use of the Manor House, which has been a money loser for quite a while, if I remember correctly, it may be a better use as an office complex.
And it did have those factors in favor of it. We just didn't have the support during those meetings and input from surveys, but the infrastructure was there.
I guess I'm having a little trouble going back and thinking about a year ago when we went for about 2 or 3 months of, I don't know how much we heard about the opposition to to basically the Clemens event center, et cetera. And there were some, I mean, I thought basically our county manager committed to him and said, if you don't want it, man, we're not going to do it. And I think that's kind of what, I mean, we've all been on that, sort of on that page. And I guess I'm probably having a hard time going back and revisiting that issue. I think generally speaking, this has a lot of promise. The question is, and I guess, and I appreciate the difficulty in estimating all these costs. I mean, I think the building costs can be estimated pretty well with the square footage costs. And I think some of the grading cost pieces are pretty, but I guess some of the individual components are better. In the plan that you had, just the outdoor covered area, were there areas that you could, like if you did have some kind of, animal, that sort of staging area, I kind of missed that. Are there any kind of like stables or show or area with that one?
So that actually assumes that the trailer would be your stable, that you'd come in for the event and then you would leave. There wouldn't be permanent stables there.
Or you could do a portable kind of issue for an event.
Could. We were, with the dollars that we have available at the moment, stables were a fairly expensive buy, and they wouldn't be used terribly often. And so with the limited dollars that we had, we were trying to put it other places and think of other ways to stable animals. But yes, we could find some kind of portable solution.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking like the tent kind of things you put up, and which I have seen before. And I guess if you did the outdoor arena, how convertible is it to a indoor arena?
So
it's on the same footprint.
Right. So from my understanding, basically you'd just be building it there. There's not a whole lot that you would be working over. Like the outdoor arena wouldn't be, there's not a whole lot to that. It sounded like it was a relatively inexpensive amenity to put there, the outdoor arena. What we saw in Chatham County was basically the dedicated space, the surface, so they were bringing in the dirt for the different kinds of events, and then you have the fencing. Well, to do a permanent facility, you're talking more structural steel and slabs and so forth, but it could still be in that area, but you're not giving up a whole lot, converting that to a covered arena.
And don't forget the cost of the floor for equestrian events in a closed area is fairly expensive. Mm-hmm. It's not dirt anymore.
Right.
Hey, it's some surface.
There's a developer from Greensboro who is putting an equestrian center in Stokes County. I'm not sure.
Roy Carroll, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure where in Stokes County, but it's going to be. It's huge. It really is.
And it sounds like their focus would be equestrian activity.
Right.
Whereas here we're talking livestock, beekeeping, outdoor education, gardening, truly multi-use versus that sounds like an equestrian facility.
In public versus private.
Right.
That was part of the problem. There was a lot of misinformation when this discussion took place. For example, the Reynolds family left the park to the people of Forsyth County. The only thing they left out was the $6.5 million the county was asked to pay for it, which we did. Some of the other problems related to it were there would be an increase in wrecks, automobile wrecks, and crime would run rampant at Tanglewood. We're talking about an event center for gardeners and that kind of thing. And as a result, a lot of, in my opinion, a lot of misinformation stories were spread about the event center as we had looked at it, and they weren't necessarily true. They weren't researched necessarily. And as the result of that was, as I recall, Kernersville wanted the event center. Winston-Salem said they would take it, and now Tobaccoville wants it. Tobaccoville, at this point, has it. And we're still discussing what we want to do with it. But I frankly think, I agree with Commissioner Kaplan. It's not that difficult. And since the county does own the park, we have a responsibility to develop that park in a manner that would be available to all 500,000 people we have in this county. And I'm not sure that at this stage of the game, we know exactly where we are on that. But I agree with Commissioner Kaplan. It's the kind of thing that could benefit the Manor House, benefit the park as a whole, and not just the folks who live in the region of Tanglewood, but when Kernersville would, in fact, I know Kernersville would go over there, a lot of folks, just to see it. But it's an argument that has been made against it that confounds me, because frankly speaking, I guess you could make an argument that this building that we're in could cause all kinds of problems just in the parking deck alone. And sometimes when you drive that, it could be true. But I think, Richard Linville, you would agree that just because you have a farm doesn't mean injuries and deaths will increase as a result. And I'm not sure that was a valid argument, but it was made.
Well, I have to say, maybe Commissioner Plyler and Commissioner Kaplan are ready for the Clemens bandwagon, but I'm not ready for those folks again. And I think we've kind of made a commitment to Tobaccoville, because we really have never done anything in Tobaccoville. So just for one vote, I'm not ready to get on that train again.
I don't blame him.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir. Oh, yes, sir.
Mr. Kaplan, I wouldn't disagree with you that the location of Tanglewood and the things that there is not a good location. But I don't remember exactly how the vote was when we decided to look elsewhere, and so we directed the staff to do so, and they have gotten this far. It seems like the area is fairly receptive of this, and I agree with you also that maybe two things is enough for me to agree with you on. I don't know, but I do agree that I'm not sure that I believe that where you are now, I think your scope is a little bit bigger than what was intended, but that's not hard to refine that if we need to. But I'm not I don't think I'm willing to go back to where we were as far as Tanglewood location. If you got well, just leave it at that. I don't see the need to go back and start all over again. I mean, we kind of got a pretty good idea of the kind of things we would want at a facility like this, but the location, I just don't see the need to go back.
I hear you, and I'm not. It's just when you hear a number of 18 million, and then you know you're going to have to take care of it. I'm getting a little cold feet on doing tobacco.
I told you I agreed with the idea that I don't think the focus or the scope was intended to be as big as it is now. We had the 5 million. The concept of doing something is okay. The location that we're looking at now, to me, is okay. I think we probably need to focus more on the scope of it, and what we talked about to begin with, and because if they're not, if the county's going to just pay the full bill of all of the operation of it, if there's not any kind of charges, probably would be in relation to the event center, but the rest of it the county's going to have to take care of. So it's going to be annual cost to go with that. So I think we need to refocus on the scope of it, and I think we're kind of a little bit out of bounds on that for the present time.
I think.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, okay.
Well, I was just going to add, so, the planets that lined up with this particular site involved the significant dollars that got injected into the airport, the really rethinking airport future growth, and how cooperative extension to a large extent sort of misplaced there a little bit, just because the inability to do agricultural trials and really do that kind of work. And so the idea that the airport had resources to claim that. And so if you think about it from an operational perspective, the cooperative extension moving there takes the cost that we've got associated with the current cooperative extension building. Those will just be hopefully less in a new building on that site. And you also have kind of a built-in programming arm. I don't have to create, one of the beauties of Tanglewood was you drop that facility in, you already got the event staff, you've got the programming piece, and really the upside's all revenue there. As we shifted and pivoted, moving an event center to a place like Rolling Hills, without cooperative extension, you do start having a lot of those increased costs. With cooperative extension being part and parcel of it, my hope is that the new additional costs are really minimized, because you do have a revenue component, and it's going to take cooperative extension. It's going to give them a lot more resources to do. A lot of what they will do will be public kind of activities, no charge, and everybody can participate in. But there will be activities related to cooperative extension where private folks want to come in and do different things. So, the beauty of I was exactly where you are in terms of trying to put a facility in a place with nothing else associated with it. I think it'll be helpful to look at it as almost two projects. We had one project located in a parks facility. Now we've really got the cooperative extension component of it, and the event center component of it. It's different because it won't be really driven by Parks and Recreation activities in nearly as much as it would have been at Tanglewood, but it will be driven really with cooperative extension. So So that's sort of the vision around this. In terms of additional dollars that could be available, we're pretty sure there's going to be some PAYGO funding because of the complexity of the budget that we're going to talk about later today. And so that piece, if Damon, if you could pull up, or Ashley, if you could pull up the second phase, what I would suggest is that middle phase project, if we can kind of consider there would be about a $5 million. What we wanted to do today is bring you things that we thought were within reach. And so, obviously the first one is in reach, but it really doesn't give you, it almost creates a problem because you really don't have any staff there to run the facility, and you've got a facility with limited use. The second one, which is around 12, with $5 million from PAYGO and the dollars we have in the bank, we can get cooperative extension there. We can start getting the programming done, and then you really do have kind of that administrative group that can help staff run that. My expectation would be we would seek legislative dollars, we would seek grant, there'll be grant dollars out there around the parks and recreation piece. We can start building all these future things into this site, and really, which is why we kind of wanted to show you what a future concept would look like, because we know that's not going to happen tomorrow. That's probably, that's a 25-year plan, but what we would ask is that if you're, and I know, no fine wine before it's time. We've been at this a little bit, but let us go ahead and move forward with, the RFP, the beginning thoughts of the second phase.
I frankly think that you've capsulized it perfectly. And, you got to hand it to the people of Tobaccoville for saying, we want this and we want to take care of it. And I have no doubt in my mind that will happen. But this type of discussion is healthy, so we can look backwards as we look forward to make both Tanglewood and what we do with the, quote, event center in Tobaccoville pliable, workable, and something that both communities can be proud of.
That one's That one is in reach if you assume an injection of funds out of PAYGO this year. Mm-hmm. The other factor is, while it's in the northern part of the county, when the Beltway is completed, right now it is hard to get from the RJR tobacco facility to Clemens. You about can't do it, but that will be that as this builds out, that connectivity will be much improved, and so it really is a site for the future. It has some things, but it's a site for the future. And unfortunately, there's a pretty expensive component of this project just getting back to the build out site. And
Mr. Chairman, a few other comments. Let me. I've got the manager nervous. I can tell when I'm doing it. I was not intentionally doing it. Sometimes things just happen.
I'm not nervous. I do have a little bit of PTSD over standing in front of that group over in Tanglewood, and I think the survey results were about 88% didn't like it. Well, they didn't like it.
He's standing there saying, "What's going on?"
They hated it.
Let me be a little more specific, Mr. Manager, so you won't have to take a blood pressure pill after a while. As we really went back and asked the staff to take another look around, and finally got to the location where we're now, and then the cooperative extension came about, evolved in this, and I had to give that a few nights of thought. So I think to talk about the scope of the project. The event center, the cooperative extension, I think we can get started there. And then I see this as being, it's a big land area and potential for more growth that can come on as time goes on. So my general suggestion would be to look at the event center, things that could be associated with it, the cooperative extension, and then, but your scope you've got now is quite a bit beyond that. I'm not saying that the things are not good, but I think some of them come on a little bit later. I was reading in the farm magazine not long ago where this farmer in Washington State retired, and so he thought he needed to do something after his retirement, and so he decided that, I don't know whether there were any farm museums in Washington State or not, but there are in several states in the Midwest. I didn't go into Washington State, or we didn't, when we was in Oregon a few years ago, and the only thing that held me back was time, and there wasn't many bridges to cross the Columbia River, so didn't get to Washington State. But anyway, to try to make the long story short, this farmer, he decided he wanted to get some kind of museum started. I'm not sure whether it was regional or in the state, so he did, and ended up getting state funding. I can't remember what part of Washington State was, or the place, area that he was at. So he got state funding, and they done something pretty big. And I got thinking about that. Well, maybe a farm museum here would, something small, some of the older relics of the things that they used to use and those kind of things. And I thought, well, I've got some stuff old enough that would qualify. And then I thought, well, maybe I could volunteer and help in this. And then I got thinking of that more, and I said, maybe I'll just make the suggestion that maybe we have some kind of museum, and then I just hold back on volunteering until I got more time. Maybe I could find some volunteers. But the difference between this other farmer and me is he was ready to retire and did, and I'm just not ready to retire right yet. One of my sons says, you just don't want to quit. Well, that's true. I don't think I'm not ready right yet. Thank y'all.
That was
Mr.
it?
Chairman, just comment, please, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Oh, I was one of the county commissioners present at Tanglewood when we had our discussion or attack or, objection, however you want to phrase it. But they were very adamant about not having a space out in Tanglewood Park. No questions asked. So I want to commend you, Damon, what you've done with this project. The $12.8 million budget to me is very feasible. I know we only have $5 million in the kitty in terms of a bond referendum, but to me it's more digestible to make the difference between 5 and 12 versus 5 and 18 at this point. And you could probably get some funds from the General Assembly and some other sources to complete the $12.8 million project sooner than the 18.8 proposed at this point. So I would vote for the project to be located at Rolling Hills at this point, with the $12.8 million project as an objective right now.
Mr. Chairman, I would very much like to add this to our ARPA funding. I think it's appropriate to use some of that money for this project. At least I would like for us to consider it.
Just another thought, having been over at the Cooperative Extension older building, I guess for the awards program this month, And looking at that, I was just thinking that, there's a fairly big room there that's kind of multi-purpose, that's for eating and presentations and so forth. What are you sort of contemplating in the square footage of the building? Because I could almost see if the footprint of that building for cooperative extension had a place that you could do some of the, I was looking, I don't have it memorized, that list of uses that people suggested, but different kinds of shows and contests and things and whatever else seems to be, if that were the way that building was designed, maybe a little bigger space in it, you could do a lot of those kind of things, if you will. And that may be, I was just thinking maybe what the square footage and the design and purposes of that building could be adjusted beyond its, just the office space, if you will. Because, that we have a chance to design it from scratch. And I got the impression that's a pretty well received by the cooperative extension folks. And I do think the future transportation with the Beltway really makes that a whole lot more attractive. And I agree. I think the central issue is the cooperative extension location, and then everything sort of flows from that. That's kind of the centerpiece. And then thinking through all the other parts as we go. I'd love to have a copy of this just to look at the different pieces as you price them, as sort of your estimated them cost.
Yeah, I think the idea that when you think about a cooperative multi-use ag center, a lot of what it's what cooperative extension does and does in that currently. So the idea that space would be kind of fit into that is exactly kind of where we're going. There's also an idea that you would keep some of cooperative extension, particularly urban ag and some things that are, that the SNAP connection with food stamps and those things. There's still a downtown presence of cooperative extension. So, the exact space move may not be the same in terms of office space.
I agree. Thank you. Any other discussion? Any other questions?
Just one question, Mr. Chairman. Damon, do you recall the last time we made a profit at Tanglewood?
Profit?
At Tanglewood Park,
year.
a profit at Tanglewood. The last time we actually made a profit at Tanglewood Park.
Sure. So we look at it kind of like the what we call revenue generating activities, and then things that are just a park.
Yes.
So if you have like the bottom there's just grass that you can use, or when you come in and you go to the left before you get to the gatehouse, it takes you to the dog park. So you got just grass that's there basically on the right, people park on. So we don't expect that to make money, or the dog park itself. So when we look at the activities that do make, or that should be revenue generating, the Manor House, the RV park, the pool, all those things do make a profit. So we kind of separate those from the things that are just purely park activities that are free and you just walk on the grass, basically.
And so the goal has always been for the, because Tanglewood Park's about a $3 million budget, is that the park side of it always come in under 1.5 million. And so in the budget that I'm submitting to you today, that number is 1.2. In terms of actual, we've had some really good years. The maintenance subsidy for the park has been as low as $600,000. We'll show you those numbers because we work from a goal around how to keep that. When we say it's profitable, we say that revenue generating activities reduce the cost enough to keep it under $1.5 million, and all except one over the last 7 or 8 years is we've hit that bogey. So,
yeah, I raised the question because I can see the Rolling Hills site eventually generating some revenue opportunities for the county, not immediately, but as we look down the line, because of the Beltway coming around, et cetera, and the cooperative center office being located there, and it may come on par with Tanglewood eventually, as we expand the activities out there. But to me, it's a no-brainer. Thank you, Damon.
Anything else? Good.
So we'll let this, it sounds like I need to let this simmer a little bit, but we'll come back before we take any action to try to start the design, any kind of design process. So we'll give it a little bit. Thanks, Damon. And there was a whole team of county staff who's been working over the years. Somebody might say, well, this was funded in 2016, or it was authorized in 2016. This was one of the projects that was at the very last, in that last slug of bond proceeds that actually get sold in the coming year. And so there's, we had a long lead time just because of when the dollars were available. Unfortunately, inflation's impacting us, but I think that's true across things. But thank you, and thanks to the team that worked through that.
Vice Chairman, before we move forward, we've been going about an hour. If it pleases the board, could we take a few minutes break?
Okay. 5-minute recess? Short one?
So moved.
5 minutes.
The 5.5-minute ceremony has passed, and Commissioner Martin, who is the Vice Chairman of the County Commissioners, is still in charge. However, I'll turn the meeting over now to the County Manager, who thinks he's in charge.
I know I am not in charge, so with that, I think I'm going to wait on the vice chairman to come up.
Smart move. Here he comes.
Thank you, sorry. Our next item, we were going to have, Minor Burnett is here, and he's going to talk about Sustainability Energy Work Group report.
My son-in-law says to tell you hello.
Well, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to discuss some of our activities and introduce a new staff member. And let me uh-oh. Okay, finally. So I'm joined by Dr. Madhu Sabnis, one of the newest members of our team. She's been with us about 7 months. And during that time, she's demonstrated that she's not only exceptionally intelligent, highly educated, but also very motivated and productive. And it's been a pleasure working with her for the last 7 months. So, brief history of, actually I'm on, there we go. A brief history of environmental protection activities in Forsyth County. Forsyth County has had a local agency working to protect the environment that's been here longer than the EPA at the federal level. The agency was created in 1968, and in 2011, the agency was reorganized and renamed and had some expansion of responsibilities. And before 2011, we were seeing growing interest in concepts around sustainability, pollution prevention, and energy management. And since then, the interest locally, regionally, and beyond has become even stronger. The word sustainability is a word that's very commonly used now. I hear it all day, every day in the world that we work in. And in 2019, there was a lot of discussion in the community. And in December of 2019, a resolution was adopted in support of clean and renewable energy and the green jobs in a sustainable economy. Shortly after that resolution was adopted, in March of 2020, the county manager organized a work group with staff from 5 different departments, and we started exploring opportunities for improvement and ideas for energy efficiency and sustainability. In the middle of the fiscal year 2021, a new position was approved, and in October of 2021, October 25th, Dr. Sabnis joined our team to help facilitate these activities. So we've been engaged in a lot of extensive technical research and analysis and planning. And some of the things that we've been looking at are what I'm here to talk about today. So one example of an opportunity for clean renewable energy for a county facility is represented in a potential project for a rooftop solar array on the parking deck attached to this building. So the parking deck rooftop is large enough to accommodate over 1,100 solar panels, and they could generate about $34,000 of electricity a year, which is about 12% of the electricity used in this building. There's more details about this in the memo, the 2-page memo that I shared with you earlier that you should have by now. So we're also looking at other opportunities for procurement of clean and renewable energy. So the 2 options are to either generate it or to buy it. And some of the opportunities for procurement include Duke Energy's Green Source Advantage program, and also renewable energy certificates that we could invest in the future. We've spent a lot of time looking into electrification of transportation. I'm sure everyone's aware that that seems to be the global direction that the world is taking. And I think every automobile manufacturer has announced plans to start making more electric vehicles, and in some cases make nothing but electric vehicles in the near future, in the foreseeable future. So we've been looking at the vehicles that are available that would be beneficial for us to consider, and also the charging infrastructure that would be needed to support those vehicles if we decide to do that. We've also looked into other electrification of things like landscape maintenance equipment, construction equipment. There's a lot of stuff being developed right now that's worthy of consideration. Starting next week, we are hosting a fellowship that's sponsored by the Environmental Defense Fund. We competed with over 100 applicants to be the host of this fellowship, and if we were paying for it, it would cost $12,000, but the cost is being covered by the Environmental Defense Fund to pay a graduate student from Rochester Institute of Technology to work for us for 10 weeks doing a research project, and it's going to be largely around electrification of transportation, including medium and heavy-duty transportation in the future. We're also looking into and trying to identify potential sources of funding to support any projects that we want to pursue. That would include incentives, grants, and other sources. And we're also looking at what other units of government are doing in North Carolina and beyond, and what's working successfully for them. You know, everybody's pretty much looking at some of the same concepts of improved energy efficiency, reduced energy consumption, and clean and renewable energy. So we've been working to establish some benchmarks to see where we are to help guide where we think we need to go. One of our meteorologists in our department named Jordan Payne used a tool called the A-Fleet tool, and that's an acronym for Alternate Fuel Life Cycle Energy Environment Tool. And he was able to use current unique emission factors for each of the 134 passenger vehicles managed in our Fleet Commander system, and was able to run a computer model to demonstrate how much fuel is being consumed and what the tailpipe emissions are that result from using those 134 cars, and that included 4 of the criteria pollutants and volatile organic compounds. Madhu has spent a lot of time collecting information and organizing it on the electricity usage at county facilities, and I would like for her to share a few comments on that at this time.
Good morning, all.
Morning.
So
Morning.
I calculated all the electricity uses by the Forsyth County facilities for the 2 fiscal year 2019-20 and 2020-21. So I compared all the electricity data for 2 fiscal years. So I calculated, or I collected the electricity user data for the Government Center, Main Library, Clemens Library, Kernelsville Library, and also more than 2 dozen other county facilities. So the electricity uses I can see, I calculated as a total kilowatt hour per square foot, and the total cost I calculated based on the Energy Manager data.
Thank you. So this is not new information, but just a reminder that we have successfully installed 30 solar panels on the parking deck at the corner of Chestnut and on Chestnut Street and First Street and Church Street, right down the street. And there's a dashboard that's available to see real-time performance data on that system. It's illustrated on the right side of half of this slide. Currently, the system has been in operation, I think, about 16 months and has generated over 20 megawatt hours of electricity. And I have not heard any comments about it requiring any attention or maintenance. Those panels are just quietly generating electricity every time the sun is, any day that the sun's out or during the day when the sun is out. And the amount of electricity is directly related to the angle of the sun and the intensity of the sun. So on cloudy days, they don't generate nearly as much as they do on bright sunny days. And during the middle of the day is when we see the peak generation.
Minor.
Yes.
Ma'am, Mr. Chair. Just a second. Yeah, I was at a conference the other day and they were talking about solar panels. Do you have any idea of the life cycle of a solar panel today? And then how do you get rid of it when it reaches the end? How do you recycle it, or can you?
So the expected lifespan of a solar panel or period of usefulness is currently about 30 years. And I think about maybe 80% of the weight of a solar panel is the glass on the top of it, on the front of it, that can be repurposed or recycled. And some of the other materials in the panel can also be recycled. The way they have been made up until now has made them difficult to disassemble, to recycle the different components, because like things are glued together and are difficult to separate. But there is some engineering work being done now on how they can be manufactured in a way that makes them more easily recyclable in the future, by using less adhesives, making the materials easier to separate when they reach end of life. So there have been several lighting upgrade projects that have been completed, including the lighting in the parking deck attached to this building and the garage building at automotive services facility up on Liberty Street, and also the Carver School Road branch library. And I think some others are being planned. So the square LED light fixture on the left in this picture is a 35 watt, uses 35 watts of electricity when it's illuminated. And those replaced older fixtures that originally had 205 watt metal halide lights in them. So the LED lights are using about 17% as much electricity as the old lights used when they were on. And if they were on 24 hours a day, these new lights would save us about $15,000 a year. If the old ones were on 24 hours a day and the new ones are only on 12 hours a day, it'll save us twice as much if we don't have them on when we don't need them. On the right is a different type of fixture. It's a higher wattage fixture. I think it's 144 watts at the automotive services facility. And I think those were used to replace higher wattage illumination in the past, but I don't have that data yet, but we're getting it. So what we're planning to do, one of the next things we're going to do, any minute now, is do a complete comprehensive analysis of these LED lighting upgrades. And we're going to look at how much we spent on the fixtures and how much electricity we're saving, how much cost we're saving, and what the effective emission reductions are that result from that.
Minor, could I say, and this has been a really, really long time. It was when I was on the school board. But we decided, after there was a study done, to cut all the lights off in the schools at night. And folks were a little concerned about break-ins and whatnot, but it proved not to be. But that was a real money-saving project. And have you considered that for county?
So it's my understanding that the lights are controlled by a system that can be, they can be on a timer. And
all the lights in the building? In all the buildings?
Some of the lights in the building, but all the lights in the parking deck.
Well, I'm talking about inside the building. That's what we did. All the lights inside the school buildings, all of them are off at night.
I certainly would not oppose that suggestion. I know in my office, If we go around and turn all the switches off, we have over 80 light fixtures in the ceiling of our office suite. If we turn all the switches off, there's still about a dozen or more that don't go off, that are, it's like they're wired to be on all the time, and I think that's for safety or security or something.
Yeah, some of, fire safety requires some of that, and so, but if you notice in this building, there, a lot of switches have been installed with those that automatically time off, especially in the bathroom, because sometimes there's a problem, but, you know, there, that is, you do see those, but.
You know, somehow you've got to know what you're doing when you're dealing with solar. About 4 months ago, I was just an inkling away from entering a plan. You probably know about it, but all I had to do was say, put them on my house, every one of them. And then some of my family said, what about the trees? They said, we're going to have to cut those trees down. That's where it stopped. But I thought, well, the sun is out and they go through and around the trees as well. So was that a good reason for me to pull back, or should I? Because I'd be willing to suggest to you that there are a lot of homes that have trees around them, but would love to have the savings you can get off of solar. And, you know, the general public, and I'm one of them, I just don't understand how it works, except that if the sun hits the panels, you save money with the electricity. But if you have a tree out there, it won't work. Is that true?
Well, that's a complicated question. If you put solar panels in an area that's shady, they're not going to perform nearly as well. It's going to take a lot longer to recover the investment through energy savings and the associated cost savings. I mean, they perform optimally in direct sunlight. So most people that install them do install them in a place where they can maximize the number of hours of direct sunlight exposure. And, you know, there's seasonal fluctuations in the angle of the sun. So you have areas that could be in direct sunlight in the summer that are shaded in the winter because the sun's at a different angle in the sky. And the people that are in the business of designing the systems take all that into consideration and know how to do a pretty good job of estimating and projecting energy generation that will result from solar panels in any given location based on all those site-specific characteristics.
And you know, what they told me too is if you put solar panels in, one of the ways you achieve savings is these panels send electricity right back to Duke Energy, and Duke Energy gets the benefit of that. Therefore, I get a benefit from it. I'd never heard that one before either, but it makes sense.
Right. Most people are using a net metering connection, so that when they're generating power, it's feeding the grid, and Duke's buying the energy. Currently, they're buying it for the same price that you're paying for it, but there's some discussion about changing that. A lot of debates underway right now about a lot of the concepts associated with this topic. And back to these lights, I also wanted to mention that those square LED fixtures in the parking deck, I think cost about $8,000 for all of them. There are 127 of them on the first through fifth floor, and they should save enough electricity and associated cost more than pay for themselves in 1 year. Also on the right, that round fixture is called a high bay fixture in the automotive services building. We got about $6,000 worth of those fixtures with the Duke Energy Incentive Program. We only paid $1,800 for those because there were more than $4,000 of incentive money that came from Duke Energy to support that project. So now is a good time to be doing these lighting upgrades. In addition to just saving electricity and cost, there's, you know, incentives to help pay for the hardware.
It's good stuff.
So in the coming year, we're going to keep researching revenue sources to support projects, grants, incentives, and other sources of funding. We're going to keep looking at feasibility for potential inclusion of solar arrays on rooftops of new buildings when they're planning to be constructed, and existing buildings when they are modified, including, for example, roof replacements, to see what opportunities we can identify there that make sense. We are planning to start engagement with subject matter experts in the community and create a group that would be like a county manager's sustainability and clean energy roundtable and try to seek input from subject matter experts close by that are very interested in contributing to our successes. We plan to continue drafting strategic planning recommendations around energy efficiency measures and clean energy procurement. And if funding is approved for electric vehicles, we would like to pursue a pilot project with some light-duty passenger vehicles that would be plug-in electric and put some vehicle charging stations in the parking deck of this building and over at the Human Services campus and start collecting data as electric cars are driven to assess the cost savings and pollution prevention benefits for electric transportation.
Gosh,
And
that would
I
be
would
good.
also like to look into the feasibility and cost associated with rainwater collection at some of the new facilities that we're talking about building, to see if we can collect some free water from rooftops for beneficial reuse on those sites. And that would be easier to do if we plan it, if it's included in the planning process for a new facility. We could also retrofit some of those components to existing facilities, but it would be easier. We would have more options available to us if it were part of the planning process of a new project.
Stormwater fees.
I was anticipating a comment like that. Maybe. But that's all I have today. There's more details in the 2-page memo that I shared with you, and we are always available to discuss any of these ideas and concepts in greater detail anytime anyone would like to have a more detailed
But
discussion.
how long is it going to be before we can go ahead and say, do what you got to do and let's see what happens? Because as far as I'm concerned, I'm ready to go.
We're going to get an opportunity to do part of that in the alternative service request, is I think what Minor's getting at.
Good. Sooner the better.
I'd certainly like to thank both of you and give you the name again on our new sustainability.
Madhu Sabnis.
Dr. Sabin. Good. Well, welcome. I apologize for my not being able to hear your name properly.
Her name is at the bottom of this screen here. So you can see the spelling.
Can't see that either, but I'm working on it. That's it.
Vice Chairman, if I may, real quick, is this possible to have electronically via email? Yeah, you can just send the report if you don't mind. Thank you.
Yeah, and actually, if you go to our agenda page, the agenda online, I think Ashley put all these documents in there.
Okay,
so,
thank you.
Yep.
And I would like to say one thing I'm sorry, were you finished?
Yes, I'm there.
Well, one thing I did want to say, I think when we passed that resolution, it kind of talked about in continuing to increase our renewable energy over time with some targets kind of way out there. But at that time, we had really no ability to begin to say, what is our carbon footprint? What is, what amount are we using of renewable energy now? And of course, part of that was also tied up into Duke Energy's, and because we're obviously buying from them. Well, some of theirs is coming from renewable sources also. But it looks like we are getting close to having the data available to where we can really begin to talk about on an annual basis, how much are we increasing our use of renewable energy. And part of that is netting out what we're saving. I mean, these savings, because there's a whole bunch of pieces. There's kinds of dollar savings, there's the, if you will, kilowatt savings and other things. There's the pollution, there's a lot of pieces, but we ought to be able to sort of monitor our success each year as we do more things and see that we're sort of moving towards that goal too, to sort of making it more meaningful than just a resolution that has an end date out when I'm not going to be here, but to kind of get at what we're doing.
Yes, those are all parts of what we perceive to be our fundamental mission in this topic of discussion. That's exactly the kind of stuff that we're working on and working towards.
And we are fortunate to have Dr. Sabnis because that really is her sweet spot around being able to pull us together. So we're on it.
That's
She
good.
on the
I
payroll
appreciate
yet?
the work. Appreciate the work. She's been working 7 months on the payroll. That's good. I got that. Thank you.
I had one quick question, Minor. This current solar panels we have downtown, they're providing energy for which buildings again?
So they're on that parking deck.
The parking deck.
And they are basically offsetting, that's probably the wrong word. They're, the electricity from those panels is going into the grid, and they're generating about 25% as much electricity as that parking deck uses. And the parking deck has lighting, it has at least two elevators, one on each far corner, and it also has the wands that control access at two entrances and exits. So there's electricity used to operate that parking deck, and those 30 panels are really a modest project and or array. And I think their peak potential production is about 10 kilowatts. What I've been seeing lately on these bright sunny days in the middle of the day is they've been reaching 7.5 to 7.3 kilowatts production rate. Today they're not producing a lot of electricity today because it's so cloudy. It's been like 1.5 kilowatt generation rate. But I feel like I'm rambling all of a sudden, but I don't know if I've answered your question.
You answered it. Thank you, Minor.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have two more presentations. One, we're going to hear from, again, our Deputy County Manager, Damon Sanders Pratt, is going to talk about Forsyth County's facility naming policy.
Could that be the Ted Kaplan Hall of Justice?
No. You'll see that's not going to be possible from what we recommend. So thank you, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, and Commissioners. So this discussion pertains to a potential naming policy. There are a number of county facilities that already bear names, mostly of commissioners and more recently of staff. And I understand that there may be some more that are in the pipeline that may be on their way for the commissioners to consider. So as staff are approached about how to handle these requests that may become more frequent, this is a potential way that the board could adopt of doing that or not. Or you can continue to do as you do and kind of just catch them as they come. So January 27th, I gave you a summary of our current facilities. I'll just go over this pretty briefly. So there are some facilities named after commissioners, which you can see here, former or serving. And we've also given donor recognitions for people that have contributed money for the Central Library, Kernersville, and Clemens branches. And then we've also named facilities based on local agreements, like we did in Kernersville to receive the property. We called it the Patterson Memorial. And then also land donations. When we receive a donation, oftentimes that land is named in honor of the benefactor or people who they designate. More recently, we've had serving county employees that have been recognized. That was the Grand Premier, who was recognized not only for being the county manager, but for his impact on the EMS system statewide, so kind of beyond just his work. And then more recently, the Central Library and Sylvia Sprinkle Hamlin, who again recognized kind of as a benefactor of the arts and making Forsyth County and North Carolina into a kind of a national destination in her other role, in addition to serving as our public library director for 30 years. So the kind of conclusion of what we already do, that there's not really a specific naming guideline. That's really just the commissioner's discretion as these things appear before you. The variety of categories that we've named facilities have been former commissioners or serving ones, county facility donor recognitions, and local agreement decisions, land donations, and then one time a serving county employee. And then more recently, you've received a request from an organization, so the Library Advisory Board, action and correspondence to you regarding the Central Library and Sylvia Sprinkle Hamlin. So the next couple of slides are samples of other policies by other organizations, primarily school boards. But so the Forsyth County Schools, their eligibility is in individuals who have been deceased at least 6 months, or employees that are at least 1 year removed from their initial retirement. So kind of a cooling vetting period. They can also be community leaders, state or national figures, and then geographic areas are other options to name facilities, what makes you eligible. For the process, new facilities are named prior to entering construction contracts. Elected officials ultimately decide the facility names. Facility administration receives the initial written nominations, and then there's a building and grounds committee that receives input and does research on the different applications that are submitted. Then the elected officials hold a public hearing to receive comments. They can select the name of that was presented that they're holding the public hearing on, or any name that comes up during the course of the public hearing. And then those who submit nominations are responsible for the cost of signs, plaques, and maintenance and so forth. Guilford County Schools, which I think in February they've updated their naming policy. So again, they have typed nominations only. It has to be a prominent person. Living people who are retired from the position from which they're being recognized, so you can't still be employed there. And then they also allow descriptive names like the Transportation Center and geographic names as well. In their process, for new facilities, they also note that they have the chief administrator create a committee of interested groups to provide 3 names in priority order for consideration by the elected body. New facilities are named, again, early during the facility design process before construction begins, similar to the Winston-Salem and Forsyth County schools. Ultimately, the elected officials decide the facility names. Elected officials, in this case, may submit applications for consideration. And then the board chair creates a facilities naming committee that meets once annually in February, and then the elected officials decide on names in March annually. At Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools, they also allow geographic names, community figures who've been deceased for at least 5 years, and then also historic figures who have been deceased for at least 5 years. You can also name things after historic locations, individuals who have contributed to a particular facility or their system generally in the school system, who have been deceased for at least 5 years. So kind of their theme there is you have to be deceased for at least 5 years to have something named after you. And then commercial or corporate entities. And their process is pretty simple. They have their chief administrator write regulations to establish developing the list to recommend to the board. And then the chief administrator seeks input from the community, whether that's a survey or a hearing of sorts. And then again, the elected officials decide. And in Wake County, it includes but not limited to persons who have worked for the school system for at least 8 years at one school or 15 years at multiple facilities. And the person has to have ended their career with schools or died while actively employed. And then persons must have been retired at least 1 year before they can actually be considered. All other names would be either geographic or site identifiers. And then their process, nominations are accepted only from groups like the PTA or the advisory board for the library in our instance, in our most recent request, but not from individuals. The chief administrator receives all nomination applications for review and potential nomination to the elected board. And then again, similar to all of them, the elected body decides. So as a draft county policy, which is these are just ideas, for nomination eligibility, it's individuals who have provided exceptional service to the citizens of Forsyth County, individuals who have brought prestige and commendation to Forsyth County. Employees are ineligible for recognition while they're still employed. Forsyth County employees have to have ended their careers for at least 5 years or be deceased at least 5 years. And then the process would be eligible county facilities would be buildings, spaces, land bodies, whatever the county owned would be a potential naming opportunity. A request would be submitted in writing to the county manager's office. Those requests would be vetted for a minimum of 90 days before a recommendation to you on considering those ideas. Elected officials ultimately decide the facility name. And our tradition has been that we name buildings, not the actual activity. So the library is named after, the building is named after Sylvia, not the actual service of the library. The names reside with the facility for the life of the facility, unless the board decides to change the name or the facility is demolished and rebuilt. Then you could then make it something else as well. And then uniquely prominent facilities like this building, the courthouse, wouldn't be named for individuals. So like you have the Hall of Justice now, or the Government Center today, those would still be kind of generic names, but you would name spaces in the building if you so chose. And so those were just draft elements So at this point, I'd stop, and if you had suggestions from what other communities did or comments, or you don't want to do anything different, want to continue to do what you do, don't need to obviously tell me now, but, and if you may want to look at those other policies and glean things that you like out of those or don't like out of them. And if that, I'll stop.
Yeah, I think having a policy is a good thing. One feature I was not familiar with, I guess it was Charlotte, whatever it was, actually they sort of just every year say if there are any things, we're going to look at them in whenever it was, January, we're going to make decisions in March or whatever it is. And that way you sort of, people, and then you combine that with groups making nominations kind of things. You got a process that kind of could be done annually, and I mean, you have a cycle basically. And if nothing's in the cycle, nothing's in the cycle.
Right. And so again, it was they had their staff review it in February, and then they would consider whatever came out of that in March.
I think we definitely need a process. I just don't think we need to be throwing names out publicly before the commissioners can discuss it or have a committee meeting or whatnot, but I definitely think we need a policy.
But thanks for sharing this. I think we can do some work on that, and we need to not let it languish, because I think you did some of this work some time ago. We need to kind of reach some closure on it and get moving.
Just one question before you leave the station, please, sir. What's the process on the Central Library's naming?
So we've ordered the letters, so there was a little bit of a supply chain issue there, but they should be here by June. There's a kind of a jeweler's case that'll have some artifacts about Sylvia there, and then the bronze has also been ordered, but I think we can do the recognition before that arrives. So, because that might be months down the road before that actually shows up.
Okay.
So June, the letters will be here, and so probably something in before June's out.
Okay. Thank you, Dan.
Sure.
Okay, and our last item, last but not least, right, our attorney, Gordon Watkins, is going to talk about city-county appointed boards, virtual meetings.
I don't know. Not sure where this is going. I'm going to blame Deputy Manager for erasing my presentation. There's only one page, so anyhow, I don't know if you have all received a copy of the Joint City-County Boards, Committees, and Commissions handout.
You want to pop it on the Elmo? We can do that. We got to go on.
I was going to say that my presentation was going to be the fastest, but now maybe the slowest. So basically, this board is to be commended because you were one of the first counties in the state to adopt a remote participation policy in 2016, and you were definitely probably the very first to go fully remote, which you were able to do with some foresight in March 2020 before the pandemic struck and other folks were left scrambling. We were ready. What I have before you today is the city of Winston-Salem is proposing to change to revise their remote policy. And the reason I'm bringing it before you is because they would like it also to apply to joint city-county boards. And the chart you see now is the listing of the joint city boards that our clerk Ashley was able to put together, and Aaron King added the designations there in yellow, which indicate which of these have public hearings, PH, and quasi-judicial is QJ. Quasi-judicial is, that's more like a court hearing, and so that has witnesses and can have cross-examination, so that really is not suitable for remote. Really, people need to be present. And so what the city has proposed is that these committees and boards would all be able to meet remotely, with the exception that both public hearings and quasi-judicial hearings would need to be conducted in person unless all of the parties and everyone withstanding agreed that they be remote. And so to me, that's a reasonable standard. And I'm just bringing it before you because these are, as I said, these are joint boards, and just wanted to know if anyone has any comment on this. And if you do, you can tell me now or you can tell me later. But the reason this is starting to come up now is because, as you know, we've been under a state of emergency, North Carolina has, and the statute for remote meetings relates to that, to when you're in a state of emergency. And so when the state of emergency is removed, the city of Winston-Salem wants clear authority for these boards to be able to meet remotely. And we are also tossing around that idea for county boards. I know the Health and Human Services Board is interested in continuing to meet either remotely or in hybrid, remote and in person. And so this is something we'll be looking at, and we'll probably propose something very similar to what the city's proposing, that public hearings and quasi-judicial would continue to be in person. That's really all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions or hear your comments on this.
You know, to me, if you're going to do a remote program and begin to connect, some boards could say, or someone could say that, well, let's just make them all that way. And in my mind, I think you just mentioned it too, it's all right to do things like that, but you have no, in my opinion, no congruity. There is no way to say, well, I know Ted and I know Don, but I don't know too much about Gloria or Richard. So, but it takes away that you've got to have some kind of knowledge of the people you're dealing with and working with and voting with, and therefore there should be some type of remote information that requires you to get acquainted. You see where I'm coming from?
I do, and to be clear, what the city's proposing would not apply to the city council. They would still meet in person with the option for, one or two members to be remote. But this is talking about boards that report to the city council, and of course some of those.
Still, you miss that personal give and take. That just to me makes a big difference.
Oh, I agree. I definitely agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
So a public hearing would be held in person. Could someone wanting to express an opinion in a public hearing, could it be hybrid? Could they call in, for example? Is that?
I believe so. I'm not sure exactly how the city runs their meetings, but I mean that's what we've been doing here with our public sessions.
We have to give an answer today.
No, you don't.
Could I ask you something kind of pertaining to this, but not really? On the Utility Commission, how do we appoint 5.5 people?
Same question.
Well, so you appoint 5. This board appoints 5. City council appoints 5, and then the chairman and the mayor jointly appoint the chairman of the Utility Commission.
Okay.
And so that's why I put 5.5. We don't have half people, but that's how I tried to show that.
That makes me feel better.
And as part of this, we last amended our remote policy for you all 2 years ago, as I said, just before the pandemic struck. If there are any requests you have about that, if you want to tweak that, just let me know on that. That's not urgent, but I will say, for instance, the city in their policy has some language we might want to adopt where it says one of the excuses for being remote is other scheduling conflicts that make in-person attendance impracticable. And so that might be some good language for us to adopt.
I would be very much in favor of that.
So I think it's our assumption that that continuing to allow citizens to participate remotely has been a really good thing, and that's something we want to continue moving forward. Do we need to do anything with our meeting policy specifically with that issue?
I don't know that we have to, but that would be a good thing to mention. I think we do. I think there are a couple tweaks, such as the one I mentioned, and that could be another one that we could do in there to be explicit about it.
Because at least my general impression from talking with you individually is that's been a really important element to, all these public hearings and everything. It's really worked well, so people have more access.
I have one question, cut this back on. I've been on the TAC since I joined the commissioner board here, and I've been the only one representing the county. Now I see there are 2 people from the county that's supposed to be appointed. Has that always been the case, or is that new from the city's recommendation?
I believe that's been the case, but I'll defer to Ms. Loop on that.
Commissioner Elamine, there are 2 appointments to the Transportation Advisory Committee. You are the voting member, and then there is an alternate member who stands as your backup.
Oh, who was my ghost backup? I'm sorry, I'm just messing with you. Okay, thank you. I wish I would have put them up front sometime. Thank you.
How about Courtney Driver? She's a driver.
Thank you all.
All righty. Any other, I guess we're ready to adjourn this meeting, end it, and we'll have lunch. And what time are we starting back?
I think we presume we're going to start back at 2:00. I will be interested in any feedback. I mean, it seemed like this was a good forum to do a lot of these things. It took some time. If you go back and as we were preparing the items for this, over the course of the weeks, we just, as we've said, well, that's a good thing to do in a morning session, and so hopefully it has worked well. If we need to tweak it, let us know.
That's good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, hold on one second. So I just have to say this. Although we're going in the reverse, because for many years now, I've sat on this board and I've asked for us to at least have some quarterly meetings for our constituents that can't come during the day, and that's not been manifested. So I at least want to go on the record again and ask for that, if it's possible, moving forward, for us to try to consider some quarterly meetings in the afternoon so constituents can participate. Thank you.
Ready to motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
I'll second the motion.
Second.